You could find tape of me saying the problem is Muslims, the problem is Islam. I can't even believe I said something like that. The problem is not a religion. It's clearly not all Muslims, but I said that. Why did I say that? I'm ashamed of saying that. And I've apologized. So let me apologize again for saying that. That's a disgusting thing to say. And if we fall for this nonsense, and you're not allowed to criticize Israel or the Jews, but you can criticize everybody else. If we fall for that, we're done.
Okay, let's unpack that. Hey everyone, welcome back to Hijabi Takes. Today, we are looking at something you don't see very often in mainstream media. A public on-camera reckoning. Someone openly admitting they were wrong. Wrong about Muslims, wrong about Islam, and wrong about how propaganda turns entire communities into convenient villains. And I want to be very clear from the start. Accountability matters. Growth matters. But so does context. Because words don't exist in a vacuum. Especially when those words helped fuel policies, wars, and narratives that cost real people their lives. So, as you're watching this, I want to know what you think. Do apologies matter if the damage is already done? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
The administration of Donald Trump has pressured and coerced colleges and universities into suppressing free speech, forcing people into a box. Right. You can say this because it's pro-Israel. You can't say this because it's pro-two-state solution. When I say pro-Israel, I mean pro-Netanyahu.
No American can be on that side. We judge people on the content of their character. We judge them as individuals. We do not judge them as groups. We do not kill their children because they've done something wrong. We do not imprison their whole family.
Do you think that Donald Trump understands that in order to please the donor class, he's funding genocide in Gaza? You talk about killing innocents. This is the slaughter of tens of thousands of innocent people.
And not an accidental slaughter. And we know this from the public statements of Israeli cabinet ministers. The point is to make the people who live there, the indigenous occupants, leave so their land can be taken, and killing their children and their women and their parents and their grandparents, killing them on purpose, is in service of that goal. So this is not accidental. This is the intentional murder of innocents in order to achieve a goal, which is the theft of land. But whatever the goal is, we can never take the side of the murder of innocents. We are officially opposed to murdering innocents, period. And when we kill innocents by accident, we admit it. We apologize. If we think it was intentional, we punish the person, including countless U.S. soldiers over the years who've been court-martialed and imprisoned, in some cases executed, for killing innocents in war.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has argued in the past 2 days that the principal reason for the slaughter of innocents on a beach in Australia last week was because the Australian government is in favor of a two-state solution. Ambassador Chaz Freeman, who's a big fan of yours and who I think you know, says Netanyahu himself is more the cause of anti-Semitism than any other figure in the modern era.
I think that's right. I mean, clearly, the decision by Netanyahu's government to claim that all criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism, that his government represents all Jews globally, when that's just a full-on lie. It's a total lie. But the decision to say that and keep saying it and get the U.S. Congress to endorse that definition and get all of our puppet politicians to stand up and repeat that definition, like, that's insane. You could find tape of me saying the problem is Muslims, the problem is Islam. I can't even believe I said something like that. The problem is not a religion. The problem is individuals. The problem is a certain ideology. It's clearly not all Muslims. Is it all Indonesians, really? But I said that. Why did I say that? I'm ashamed of saying that. And I've apologized. So let me apologize again for saying that. Just is that if I ever said it's all Jews because I don't like Mark Levin, it's all Jew. That's a disgusting thing to say. But I've said that about Muslims. So all of us are prisoners of whatever hysteria surrounds us. We're influenced by it. And I think a lot of decent people have been carried away to a point where they're defending what is genocide in Gaza, But it doesn't mean there won't be massive consequences for the country, for their souls, honestly.
Right.
You can't do that. You need to repent of that. You need to say, I'm sorry I did that. You have to do that, or you imperil like yourself eternally, but you also risk destroying your own country. And that's exactly where we are. And we also need to call out like true radicalism. Laura Loomer, who has like a press pass to the Pentagon, yesterday said we need more Meir Kahanas, okay, the founder of the Jewish Defense League, who was a convicted terrorist. I'm not throwing this around like, oh, he's a terrorist. He was literally a terrorist.
Correct.
He was murdered in 1990, but under U.S. law, he was a terrorist. He admitted he was convicted twice for bombing people. He admitted he did it. So he was exactly what we say we're fighting against. He was a terrorist, killing innocents to make a political point or achieve a political end. And here you have Laura Loomer endorsing him openly. You've Lindsey Graham saying on tape, if you don't do what Israel wants, God will kill you. You have Mike Huckabee saying exactly the same thing. America will be destroyed unless we follow the lead of Benjamin Netanyahu. This is true extremism. And these are not small people. Mike Huckabee is the U.S. ambassador to Israel. Lindsey Graham is the senior senator from South Carolina. Laura Loomer is all over the executive branch as like an advisor. Like, you can't have this. You have to say that this is wrong. It's getting too crazy. We're going to wind up with real violence if people keep talking this way. And if we fall for this nonsense that it's only group rights exist, and you're not allowed to criticize Israel or the Jews, but you can criticize everybody else because whatever. If we fall for that, we're done. And I think we're really close to that. We cannot allow that.
So why did the Congress give Benjamin Netanyahu 56 standing ovations in a 58-minute speech? Is it because their campaigns are funded by AIPAC?
I had the smartest conversation, deepest conversation I ever had about this was with Jeff Sachs, who I know is your friend and mine. Right. And he said, yeah, it's the money. Of course, there is blackmail. There are threats. That's all real. But there's something deeper. There's like almost a spell. I mean, Huckabee, for example. You really think Huckabee is being threatened? Huckabee's being paid?
No, Mike is more the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. than he is the U.S. ambassador to Israel.
So it's so degrading to the office, to the State Department, to the U.S. government, to all of us as Americans, to have someone like Huckabee advocating for a foreign country as he's supposed to be advocating for ours. Like, that is degrading. But when he stands up and says, God will destroy our country if we don't support Bibi, it's like, how could someone ever say something like that?
So Donald Trump ran as the peace president. He's funded a war in Ukraine. He's funded genocide in Gaza. He's funding a war in Yemen. He attacked the Houthis. Now he's going to start a war in Venezuela. What do you think he thinks about? Why do you think he does this?
No, you don't speak the language of that country. No, we don't really understand anything about it. Where is Yemen exactly? Who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? Has anyone ever defeated them? You don't have to ask those questions. It's like, we're going to attack the Houthis because they're bad. And you can sort of see the mindset. Even Obama, maybe especially Obama, Clinton, George W. Bush was just like an idiot. So he was taken over immediately. But even people who are like, I don't want to get into this, have gotten into it because it's the nature of the system. I'm not giving Trump or anyone a pass. I just have watched this since 1985 when I got to DC, and it's always the same story. So you really need to think about what is the role of CIA in this? It's the system is more in control than any elected leader. That's just clearly true.
Why are we in Syria? Why were American troops there to be killed 2 weeks ago?
Well, of course, they're there to be vulnerable in order to pull the United States ever more deeply into that region, the Levant, which is, not that relevant to American national interests. There is, no meaningful natural resources, tiny populations, lots of sectarian violence that's hard to understand. It has nothing to do with us, and there's no reason that we should be heavily involved there. It doesn't affect trade routes in a meaningful way. Like, the whole thing is just crazy. The only reason that we're so focused on it is because we've made a security guarantee to Israel, not officially, but in effect, with the complicity of the U.S. Congress because of a lot of the reasons we discussed. And so we're there because of Israel.
This right here is rare. Not the apology itself, but the admission of how hysteria works, how fear gets manufactured, how Muslims become the placeholder enemy after 9/11, not because of evidence, but because it was politically useful. And he is right about one thing. Saying the problem is Islam was never just an opinion. That rhetoric helped justify surveillance, mass incarceration, torture programs, endless wars, and the dehumanization of entire populations. When you reduce people to an ideology, it becomes very easy to rationalize violence against them. What's especially important here is the distinction he makes, and one the media intentionally blurs between criticizing a government and targeting a people. That distinction magically exists when it comes to Western nations, but disappears the moment Israel enters the conversation. And when he talks about Gaza, let's not water that down. This is not collateral damage. This is not fog of war. Tens of thousands of Palestinians, the majority women and children, have been killed, hospitals bombed, journalists targeted, entire family bloodlines erased. Israeli officials themselves have used language of erasure, displacement, and collective punishment. And that's documented on record publicly. So when people say, why are you calling it genocide? That's why. Intent matters, pattern matters, and international law matters. What really stood out to me was the point about conflating Judaism with the actions of the Netanyahu government. That lie does not protect Jewish people, it endangers them. When a state claims to act on behalf of all Jews worldwide, it turns justified political criticism into a manufactured accusation of anti Semitism. That's not solidarity, that's weaponization. And the extremism being called out here, that's not French. When elected officials and government insiders openly endorse violent ideologies, religious supremacy, and collective punishment, that is radicalism. And it's being normalized in real time. What's happening in Gaza didn't start on October 7th. It didn't start with Hamas. It is the result of decades of occupation, siege, land theft, and dehumanization, funded, defended, and shielded by Western powers who then act shocked when the world calls it what it is. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Propaganda doesn't just lie, it reshapes morality. It convinces decent people to excuse the unthinkable. And Gaza has exposed that more clearly than anything in recent history. Yes, people can grow. Yes, people can apologize. But growth also requires reckoning with who paid the price while the hysteria was loud, profitable, and politically convenient. Palestinians are not abstractions. They are children who never made it to school, parents pulling their babies out of rubble, families wiped out so thoroughly they no longer exist in civil records. And no amount of rhetoric, donations, or standing ovations can erase that reality. If this conversation made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is where clarity begins. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Share this if it resonated. And as always, silence is not neutrality, it is complicity. And justice does not require permission. Until next time, take care.